Welcome to the Writing Corner. My name is LD Valencia, and today I want to talk a little bit about my plans for next year as far as book releases and things like that. So right now, I am in the throes of working on book 2, as well as kind of book 4 in my new series. So with that, I am mostly doing revisions on book 2, cleaning up things. Most of this last quarter of the year has been going through the edits that my editors have given me, cleaning things up, fixing things, moving things around a little bit. Some of it is tedious stuff like going through and looking at their track changes and just kind of like checking things off the box and seeing like, okay, this is what they did here and everything. And other parts are like, they've given me notes saying like, hey, you need to fix this, or hey, you need to add this, or hey, you need to do this here, right? So I'm kind of in that part right now where I'm going in and making the corrections and the changes that need to be fixed, right? Like POV slips. Sometimes, I might have a line or a paragraph in there that is about this character when the chapter is from this character's POV. So, you wouldn't know what this character's thinking or feeling because it's from this person's perspective. So fixing things like that. I had like one chapter out of order or something, which I don't really know how that happened. I still, for the life of me, can't figure out how this one chapter got moved. But I know there was some moving of things in book 2 because some things didn't line up quite as well. My goal with each of the books, at least in this main series, is to have like the characters all kind of start doing different things, but by the end they come together and figure out what's going on and deal with the problem, right? So that didn't happen terribly well with a couple of the characters. They kind of were left in limbo, and there wasn't that satisfying connection at the end where they all kind of like join up to defeat the villain kind of thing. So that kind of happened in the revisions and everything and the rewrites. So somehow this chapter got put somewhere else, I guess, where it wasn't really supposed to be. So the main goal is to get book 2 out probably around, my hope is the first quarter. So by March, I'm thinking, having book 2 out. Book 2 is called Echo of Scales, which is, I think, really fun. It was just a really cool, like, strong line I felt in one of the kind of final chapters when something's revealed. And I really, really liked it, and I was like, that's probably got to be the title right there, right? So with that, I'm kind of working on that. I'm also working on book 4, like I said, and some people you probably are like, what about book 3? But book 3 is done. I haven't sent it to the editor yet because I'm not really in a space to be working on it right now. So pretty soon I probably will be getting it to the editor. Maybe early next year, early 2026, I'll try and get it to her and get it to them to start the reading and get things going with that. But really, I'm working on book 2, hoping to get that out early next year. And then hopefully I'll have book 2 out before the end of the year. My goal is to have 2 of those books out by the end of the year, 2026. But I'm also working on book 4 in the series, which is going to be possibly the penultimate, possibly the ultimate finale of this first arc. And my goal is to do a second arc with kind of a different thread, a different kind of villain, different scenario. So the first 4, if not 5, are going to be like this first arc, and then I have a plan for a different arc. Now, that's going to be the main series, but I do have plans for doing 2, if not 3, side stories, and I'm not really sure if they will go from novellas or if they'll be full-length series. There's be somewhere in there. They might be shorter novellas that are for free on my newsletter, or they might be full series that end up being on, for purchase on Amazon. We'll see kind of how those things fall. But I'll talk a little bit about what those plans are in this video. So the first idea that I have is I really would love to do a series that is kind of a political intrigue type story in this elven kingdom that's referred to a couple times in my series, Cabell. It's a elven kingdom to the south. It is where one of the main characters, Dexter, is from, but he's half elven, so he's kind of ostracized and eventually leaves and moves to Tenedris and takes up a residence there and goes to school and everything and becomes a professor and so on, right? But I really want to do like a political intrigue story that is probably like lower action, but like high like twists and turns and stuff like that. It'll be the first time I've ever written anything like kind of in that specific niche. If you've ever read my Gifted World series, it does lean heavily on the spy, but more Mission Impossible style. So it's like actiony, but it's like still spy stuff. And I really, really love spies, and I really love superheroes. So that's why like that book series is the way it is, because those are two of my favorite genres. I love spies, I love superheroes. So anything like in that vein, I'm like all in on, right? But this will be a little bit more, I guess, like spy, but also like political intrigue with a heavy influence of like kind of like the Game of Thrones, like different houses and things like that. But really it's going to be kind of like jockeying for power in this kingdom, not so much trying to get to the throne as much as it is the different elven houses kind of like jockeying for position and things like that, and kind of like exploring what is that like for this elven kingdom. And again, I don't know if that's going to be a novella. I don't know if it's going to be a full series. We'll kind of have to see. The other big idea I have is I want to do a series. I've had this idea for a couple years now, maybe 2-3 years. Most of the time that I've been working on this fantasy series. I want to do a book that's kind of like, the best way I can kind of describe it is like fantasy Yellowstone. And so what that's going to look like is a paladin that is kind of like retired to this like faraway land in the continent and bought land and everything. And he's probably like pretty old, maybe like on his deathbed kind of thing. Maybe like, you know, I'm not sure how old he'll be, but it's about him and protecting this like little community and this little like ranch he has from these other forces that are getting involved, right? So there's going to be like some other group or other noble that's like trying to encroach on his land, maybe even take his land and everything, and then dealing with these other forces and things like that. Kind of like you see in Yellowstone, but with kind of a fantasy spin in my setting, right? So that's another idea of something I want to do. I have some other ideas of like probably like smaller novellas that will be in my universe, but will probably be more like short novellas that will probably be in my newsletter and stuff like that. One of them being, I want to do a story that's probably going to set in the Runesmith Academy, and you know, probably like focusing on like what runesmiths are like and some stuff like that, and kind of like what's going on there and everything. And another one about the character Dexter. I mentioned him before. He is a really fun character, but I also want to do something about him, either like his journals or his exploits in other places, and kind of see like where he goes. He's kind of a fun character. He's kind of like a goofy, kind of puts in his foot in his mouth, but is also like really, really smart kind of character. But possibly like, you know, he finds himself in other planes of existence, like these elemental planes, right? Because kind of like you've seen in other books and stuff, there's like multiple planes of like elemental existence in this world. And so he might find himself in other places, right? As he's researching, exploring, and things like that. And then I'm a big fan of like fantasy history books, like The Silmarillion. I loved Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin. That was kind of like the history of Westeros / Essos. I really, really like those books. So I kind of want to do one that's like in my world. And again, it might be a novella. I keep talking about these novellas, so maybe I'll just like compile all these novellas into like one book that's like the world of, you know, my series, and kind of like have something like that. Maybe we'll see. But those are some ideas for the next year, possibly several years, because like I said, you know, I have a lot of ideas, so it might be years down the road that some of these come to fruition. But that's kind of my plans for this upcoming year as far as my writing. Next video, I want to go into what are my big exciting reads for next year, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I'd love to hear from my other fellow authors and readers and everything. What are some things that you're excited about for next year? Hit me up in the comments, and I'd love to hear what you're reading and what you're writing and working on right now. Thanks so much for joining us in the Writing Corner. My name is LD Valencia. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.